The morning I found out, I was standing in the rain outside a Tim Hortons on Wellington Street, holding a double-double I hadn't touched yet, staring at a number on my phone that didn't make sense. $43,000. That's what was left in the account. There should have been $212,000. I stood there long enough that the coffee went cold. I didn't notice. I kept thinking I must have read it wrong, or the app was glitching, or something. Anything. That wasn't what it looked like. Because what it looked like was impossible. That account had my name on it, mine, and one other person's. Someone I had trusted more than almost anyone alive. My son. I'm 54 years old. I spent 31 years as an electrician with a union shop out of Hamilton. Before that, I did 2 years of college, then apprenticed under a man named Pete, who smelled like cigarettes and black coffee and never once cut a corner on a job. He taught me that you do the work right or you don't do it at all. That stayed with me. I carried it through every job, every inspection, every winter crawling through attics and houses that hadn't been heated in weeks. When I retired early, well, not really retired, more like my knees made the decision for me. I had a decent pension from the union, and I'd put away money carefully for most of my adult life. No fancy vacations, no big toys. I drove a used F-150. I cooked most of my own meals. My wife Elena used to tease me about it, said I grew up during a recession that hadn't happened yet. She died 6 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. That's not enough time. It's not enough time to say everything, to do everything, to even understand what's happening before it's already over. After she passed, the house felt like it belonged to someone else. I'd walk through it and recognize objects. The ceramic lamp she bought at a market in Stratford, the ugly but somehow perfect curtains she picked out for the kitchen, and feel like a guest. I rattled around that place for 2 years before I finally admitted I couldn't keep it up on my own. Too big, too quiet, too full of her. I sold it. The house we'd built equity in for 26 years. After fees and everything settled, I cleared just over $140,000. Combined with what I already had saved, it brought my total to around $212,000 sitting in the account. That was supposed to be the rest of my life. My older son, Mitchell, had lived in Vancouver for 8 years. Good job in project management, nice apartment near Commercial Drive. We talked every couple of weeks, sometimes more. He's steady, methodical, the kind of person who reads the terms and conditions. Not warm exactly, but reliable. You always knew where you stood with Mitchell. My younger son, Aiden, had stayed in Ontario. Moved around a bit, Brantford, then Burlington, then back to Hamilton, but never too far. He'd been the difficult one growing up, the one the teachers called spirited, the one who could charm anyone in a room, but sometimes used that to get out of things he should have faced head on. I loved him completely. I also knew exactly what he was. After Elena died, Aiden was the one who showed up. He was there for the funeral arrangements, there when I couldn't sleep, there every Sunday for months bringing food and sitting with me while I couldn't talk. Mitchell flew in for the funeral and stayed 3 days, then had to get back. I understood. I didn't blame him. But I noticed. About a year after Elena passed, Aiden came to me with an idea. He'd been working in real estate. Not as an agent, more administrative stuff, property management. And he wanted to start his own small firm. He'd done the research, he said. He had a contact, a potential first client, a plan on paper that he walked me through at my kitchen table over 2 cups of coffee. I'm not asking you to invest, Dad, he said. I know you need that money. I just want you to understand what I'm trying to build. I was proud of him. God, I was proud of him. This was the thing I'd always hoped for. That the drive that used to get him into trouble would eventually turn into something real. 2 months later, when he mentioned that it would really help to have a joint account for appearances with clients, for credibility, just while he got things off the ground, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Just temporary, he said. Just until I'm established. I told him, of course. He was my son. The next year and a half, I wasn't paying close attention. That's the honest truth. I checked the balance occasionally, saw money going in and out, assumed it was business related. Aiden had explained there would be some movement at the start. Deposits, expenses, back and forth. I trusted him. I also got busy, in the way that retired people sometimes do, filling time with projects, volunteering twice a week at a community garden in my neighborhood, driving my sister-in-law to her chemo appointments because her daughter lived in Calgary and couldn't always make it. I wasn't watching the account the way I should have been. When I finally looked, really looked, scrolled back through the transaction history on a rainy Tuesday morning outside of Tim Hortons, I saw a pattern that made my stomach drop through the pavement. Withdrawals. Regular, deliberate withdrawals. Not chaotic, not dramatic. Methodical. 3,000 here, 5,000 there. Sometimes labeled with business-sounding descriptions, sometimes not labeled at all. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Over 18 months, adding up to $169,000. I called Aiden. He didn't answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I drove to his apartment. Nobody home. His neighbor said he hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks. I sat in my truck in the parking lot and tried to remember how to breathe. The next morning, I went to the bank. Not my usual branch, but the main one downtown, because I needed to talk to someone who could actually help me. I brought every document I had, the account statements I'd printed at home, my ID, my pension information. The woman at the front desk was young, maybe late 20s, and she brought me to a private office and listened while I explained. Then she pulled up the account on her screen, and I watched her face change. Not dramatically, just something behind her eyes went careful. She excused herself for a moment. When she came back, she had a branch manager with her, a man in his 50s, soft-spoken, with the kind of manner that told you he'd had hard conversations before. He looked at the screen, he looked at me, then he said quietly, "Mr. Calloway, I think there's something here you need to see." He turned the screen so I could read it. There was a flag on the account. Someone at the branch, a teller who'd processed one of the larger withdrawals 7 months ago, had flagged it internally. She'd noted that the transaction seemed inconsistent with the account holder's profile. The flag had been reviewed and, somewhere in the process, not escalated the way it should have been. The manager's voice was steady and professional, but I could hear something underneath it. Discomfort. Accountability. He told me the bank would need to open a full investigation. He told me I had options. He told me they would want to work with me. What I heard underneath all of it was, "We saw something and we didn't stop it." I sat with that for a long moment. Then I asked him what my options actually were. That's the part nobody tells you about when you hear these kinds of stories. You imagine a clear path, betrayal discovered, authorities called, justice delivered. But the reality is that you end up in a series of rooms answering questions, signing forms, being told that these things take time. I contacted the Hamilton Police Service. A financial crimes officer took my statement over 90 minutes, nodded a lot, told me to preserve all documentation. I contacted a lawyer, a woman in her 60s who specialized in civil litigation, and had a no-nonsense manner that I found very comforting. She laid out my options: a civil suit against Aiden, a complaint to the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, and the potential for a criminal charge through the police investigation, though she was honest that criminal convictions in these cases aren't guaranteed. I also called Mitchell. That was its own kind of hard. There was a long silence on the line after I finished explaining. Then he said, "I'm coming home." He was there in 2 days. He didn't try to explain it away or make excuses for his brother. He just sat across from me at the kitchen table, a different kitchen, in the apartment I'd rented after selling the house, and said, "What do you need?" I hadn't realized until that moment how much I needed someone to ask me that. Aiden eventually surfaced. 3 weeks after I first called him, he sent a text message. It said, "I know you know, I'm sorry, I can't explain it right now, that's all. No call, no showing up at the door." My lawyer advised me not to respond. I put my phone down on the counter and stood there for a while, looking out the window at the street below. A woman was walking a dog. A kid on a bike rode through a puddle. Everything out there completely ordinary, completely unaware. I thought about the Sunday dinners, the way Aiden used to call Elena mom, even though she wasn't his biological mother. I'd remarried briefly in my 30s, and Aiden was my son from that relationship. But Elena loved him like her own, and he loved her the same way back. I thought about the morning after her funeral, when I found him sitting alone in her garden, not saying anything, just sitting. I had believed in him so completely. The investigation took 8 months in total. The bank's internal review concluded that there had been a failure to act on the teller's flag, and after significant back and forth, and after my lawyer made clear we were prepared to escalate to OFI and file a formal FCA complaint, they agreed to a partial restitution of $47,000. Not everything, not even close to everything, but something. The police investigation resulted in charges. Fraud over $5,000. The process moved slowly, the way Canadian courts do, and I won't have an outcome to tell you before the calendar turns again. But the charges are real. They're on record. That matters to me, even when I can't fully say why. What I can tell you is that Aiden hired a lawyer of his own, and through that lawyer I received a document outlining a repayment proposal, small monthly amounts that, if held to, would clear the remaining debt in 11 years. My lawyer called it optimistic. She wasn't wrong. I took it anyway. Not because I expect to see all the money, but because I want something on paper. I want a record that says what happened, happened. Here's what nobody ever talks about in these situations: the embarrassment. Not the kind you feel from strangers. Most people I've told have been understanding, even generous. The kind that lives in you. The particular shame of having been the person who signed the form, who said yes without reading carefully, who told himself it would be fine because it was family. I'm an electrician. I spent 3 decades being careful, being precise, being the person who checks the work before signing off. And then I handed my son access to my life savings, because he sat at my kitchen table and looked excited about something for the first time in years. My sister-in-law, Elena's younger sister, the one whose chemo appointments I'd been driving her to, called me about 6 weeks into all of this. She'd heard through the family. She said something I've been thinking about ever since. She said, "You didn't get fooled because you were stupid. You got fooled because you were hopeful." There's a difference. I've been turning that over in my mind for months. Mitchell calls twice a week now. He flew back out in March and we spent a long weekend together, drove down to Niagara on the lake, ate too much, talked more than we had in years. He'd always been the son I felt I understood less, the one who'd moved furthest away, who communicated in practical gestures rather than words. But there we were, sitting on a bench overlooking the lake while it was still cold enough that we could see our breath, and he said something that surprised me. He said, "I always thought Aiden was the one you were closer to." I had to think about that. "I thought he needed more," I said. "I confused need with closeness." Mitchell nodded like he understood that. Maybe he did. I moved to a smaller apartment in Burlington last spring. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, with a balcony that faces east so I get the morning light. I kept some of Elena's things, the ceramic lamp, the kitchen curtains, because I decided they're mine now too. Everything else I let go. I still volunteer at the community garden. I started helping out with a home repair program through a local nonprofit. They connect retired tradespeople with low-income homeowners who need basic electrical and plumbing work done. It's not paid, but I get more out of it than I expected. My lawyer is still working on the civil side of things. The police file is still open. These things move slowly in ways that require you to keep a certain patience I'm still learning how to have. But I want to tell you something that took me a long time to say out loud. I'm not done. I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean it the same way you'd say it after a bad winter. Not triumphant, just matter of fact. There were 169,000 reasons this should have broken something in me permanently, and some days it still feels like it might have. But then the morning light comes through the balcony door and lands on the kitchen table, and I make myself a coffee and I sit down and I'm still here. After everything settled enough for me to think clearly again, I went back to that bank branch, the one downtown. I asked if the teller who had flagged the account 7 months before was still there. She was. Young woman, early 30s, quiet manner, the kind of person you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. I introduced myself, told her I was the account holder, told her I knew she'd flagged a transaction that hadn't been followed up the way it should have been. She looked at me carefully, like she wasn't sure what kind of conversation this was going to be. I said, "I just wanted you to know that you were right, and I'm sorry it didn't get caught earlier, but I'm glad you saw it." She said she was glad I came in. We didn't shake hands or make a big moment of it. I thanked her and left. Walking back to my truck, I thought, that's the whole thing, isn't it? Someone sees something and says something, even when the system around them doesn't follow through the way it should. One person paying attention. One person who could have said nothing and didn't. If you're watching this and you have a joint account with anyone, a child, a spouse, a sibling, anyone, I'm not here to tell you that everyone you love is going to betray you. That's not the lesson. Most people won't. Most relationships hold. But I will tell you this. Go look at the transactions. Not because you don't trust them, because it's your money, and you have a right to know where it is. Set up transaction alerts. Talk to your bank about what protections are on the account. In Canada, you can call the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. It's a federal agency, and they have real resources. Real people you can talk to. It's not paranoia, it's just paying attention. It's what I should have done. The last time I saw Aiden in person, before all of this, before I knew, was Christmas 2 years ago. We had dinner at his apartment in Burlington. He'd cooked, which surprised me, because he'd never shown much interest in cooking before. Some pasta dish he said he'd learned from a video online. It was actually really good. We talked about Elena. We laughed about some things I hadn't laughed about in a long time. He told me he was happy, that the business was coming together, that he felt like things were finally clicking into place. I drove home that night, feeling like something had shifted, like we'd found something new after so much loss. I think about that night now, and I don't know what to do with it. Whether it was real or performance, whether he already knew what he was doing to the account, or whether it came later. I may never know. That uncertainty is its own kind of weight that I'm learning to carry. But I know this. Whatever that dinner was, I was there for it fully. I brought everything I had to that table. Whatever came after, that part wasn't mine to regret. That's the thing about loving people. You can't protect yourself from it without also losing the point of things entirely. I choose not to lose the point. I'm still my father's son. I still believe in doing the work right or not at all. That didn't change. And someday, not today, maybe not this year, but someday, I'd like to sit across from Aiden again and say the things that need to be said. Not to forgive him before he's earned it, not to pretend, but because I don't want to be the kind of man who closes doors forever. Elena wouldn't have wanted that, and the truth is, neither do I.